Hi, Johnny at Bricks and Mortar Mortgages. Thanks very much for subscribing to the website. It really is much appreciated. I'm sure you'll get a lot of benefit from being a member of the community at Bricks and Mortar Mortgages. You've subscribed because you need a mortgage. I think that's fairly obvious. You're maybe a first-time buyer, you're maybe a buy-to-let investor, or you're maybe a home mover. But what you're looking for is the peace of mind that a mortgage broker can give you as far as ensuring that you're going to get the best mortgage for your circumstances. And we're absolutely adamant at Bricks and Mortar Mortgages that we will provide the best advice, service and assistance throughout your whole journey to get you the best mortgage. We'll avoid and remove the hassles as far as the mortgage is concerned, and we'll give you 100% guarantee that if you have paid us a fee, then you will get that back if we can't get you a mortgage. But the other thing that you will have in common with the other subscribers is that you absolutely loathe the closing date, and you want to know tips and tricks which will ensure that you have the best chance possible of being successful at the closing date. You will have tried putting an offer in. You maybe have tried a one-to-one negotiation, but for whatever reason, there is just too much interest in this property and the estate agent has called a closing date. In a previous life, I was a solicitor. I spent 25 years in the trenches of residential conveyancing. I've probably done thousands of closing dates. So there are tips and tricks which I want to impart to you so that you get an understanding of what you can do. These 10 tips over the next 2-minute video, 10 2-minute videos, are going to be actionable ideas and tips that I use on a day-to-day basis. So listen, without any further ado, let's get started on tip number 1. Right, let's start with number 1. This is just all about the fundamentals. The whole point about a closing date is that the estate agents and the sellers are wanting to try and get the most for the property. That's pretty obvious. And what they'll try and do in every occasion is to pull you on to a closing date. Now, it won't be the first time that estate agents have suddenly miraculously pulled some viewers out of the hat and notes of interest. It does happen. It's happened. I've spent 25 years. The stories I could tell you as far as that is concerned would put hairs on the back of your neck. But you've tried the one-to-one negotiation, that's not worked, and so you're on to a closing date. Ultimately, everybody knows what the value of the property is because now we've got a home report. So if I'm going to be bidding a property and you're going to be bidding for a property, you're going to be bidding in excess of the home report value. It's very unusual at a closing date where the property does not at least get home report value. So you need to be understanding that if you can't do a one-to-one negotiation, you're going to end up, in all likelihood, in paying more than the home report value. And what we're going to do in these videos is try and give you tips and tricks as far as how you can best put yourself in a situation where you're going to be successful. So the market, first of all, I guess you've got to understand where the market is as far as what time of the year you enter the market. So the market is cyclical. So at the start of the year in January, there's a bit of a spike in February because there's a lot of stuff that is on the market round about Christmas time that isn't sold, and people come out of Christmas thinking, I've got to buy a property. It then drops into March, and then the buying season from March through to June. If you can avoid March through to June, then do avoid that. It then falls off a cliff as far as the summer is concerned. Once the schools come off of summer, then there's a little bit of a hike back up to October, and then after October, after I guess the October holidays, then it dribbles down to Christmas. So that's an idea of the cyclical nature of the market. Okay, this is number 2, and I've entitled this The Kitchen Sink. This is all about the numbers of notes of interest. Generally speaking, the more there are notes of interest, then the more likely it is that you're going to get a nutcase offer or the kitchen sink offer. The kitchen sink offer is very difficult to beat And generally it will come out where if you've got 8 or more people who are bidding on a property, there will be somebody within that 8 or so who have missed out on numerous occasions as far as the closing date is concerned, and they've just been completely scunnered by the whole process, and they've just said, you know what, I'm just going to put the whole kitchen sink in, I don't care, I want this property and I'm going to do everything I can. It is very difficult to beat a kitchen sink offer, and so you've got a better chance of being successful in a closing date scenario where there are fewer notes of interest. The other difficulty that you might find is that if you're in a situation where you are competing against a downsizer, that's to say somebody who is going to be ending up buying the property and this is going to be their last purchase, and they're not going to be buying another property because they'll be taking them out in a box at the end of their time in the property. So it's very difficult to beat somebody who has got a situation where they are downsizing and they are going to not need a mortgage. But generally, make sure that if you can, you should be trying to bid on a property where there are 4 or less notes of interest. I think that if you've got 4 or less notes of interest, then you've got a fighting chance. Anything more than 4, and then, as I say, you're probably likely to get a kitchen sinker in there. Okay, so this is number 3, entitled, When is a note of interest not a note of interest? Now, so many of my clients have said that they want me to note an interest, and I've said to them, well listen, a note of interest doesn't necessarily mean that it's an automatic that a closing date is going to be called. A note of interest will give you the opportunity, if a closing date is called, to make an offer, but it doesn't stop the estate agent from accepting an offer where somebody has come in and said, listen, I don't want to compete at a closing date. If you put this to a closing date, then I'm not going to offer. And what sometimes happens is that they then, the person who wants to make that offer, they persuade the estate agent to enter into one-to-one negotiation when there's already notes of interest. So this can work, I guess, both ways. It doesn't automatically mean that when you note an interest and there are other notes of interest that they won't look at an offer. Listen, that offer, if that's you and you want to try and avoid the closing date, your offer has to be a real stonking offer. It has to be an offer which the estate agents think that they can potentially get at a closing date. And of course, they'd rather take the bird in the hand, i.e. your offer. But be aware that if you note an interest, there is no guarantee that a closing date is going to be called. So just be aware of that. There's very little that you can actually do other than continue to contact the estate agent and ask them when is a closing date going to be called. Okay, this is number 4, keep your powder dry. When you are in a negotiation to buy the property, before it goes to the closing date, you always have to be aware that potentially it could go to the closing date. So the last thing you want to do in a one-to-one negotiation with the estate agent is reveal what your top offer is going to be. And you don't want to do that because potentially what can happen is that your offer that you make is ultimately revealed to other people who are viewing the property. I'll show you and tell you an example. So let's say a property's offers over 95, it's got a home report of 105. I go to the estate agent and trying to avoid a closing date, and I say to them, listen, we're prepared to offer 105. The estate agent then is duty bound to then tell their client, the seller, that they've got an offer of 105. But there's still a number of, say the property is just on the market and they're still taking viewers. The new viewers that are going to go out to the property are clearly going to ask, have you had any offers, how's marketing going? To which the seller then replies, it's great, we've already got an offer of 105. The problem with that then obviously is that it is no longer offers over 95, it's no longer offers over 100, it's offers over 105 because you've revealed your hand. but you've revealed your hand in the hope that you're trying to negotiate before it goes to a closing date, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But be aware that you need to make sure that that final offer that you make, you need to make sure that you've got more petrol in the tank. You need to have somewhere to go, because ultimately everybody will then realise and be told that the property offers over 105. So for goodness sake, if you're doing a one-to-one negotiation, keep your powder dry and some petrol in the tank. Right, we're on to number 5, and we've called this the lucky number. It is always sensible not to put an offer in with a rounded figure, okay? Because so many of the competing offers will just have that rounded figure. What you want to try and do is take your offer above that rounded figure. So for example, if you've got your offers and the home report is £100,000, and you put the offer in, or you're thinking of putting an offer in, putting in £5,000 over the home report value, you should think about putting and a little bit, such as a lucky number. The best story I can tell you is that we once won a property at a closing date by £11, mainly because, well, it was the only reason was because my client was born on the 11th of March. So do think about doing that. It is a sensible ploy. And would you not rather put that in than not put it in? There could be nothing worse than, rather than me telling you that you won the property by £11, me telling you that you lost the property by £11. So stick in the lucky number, you never know. Right, this is number 6, and I've entitled this Dig the Well Before You're Thirsty. What you've got to try and do is create as much of a foundation to ensure that you can be as successful as possible at a closing date. And one of the things that you want to be trying to do is to create relationships with those who you will meet on your purchasing journey. So obviously you've got the estate agent. The better the relationship that you have with them, then the more likely they are going to be able to tell you information which is potentially going to unlock the best offer as far as the closing date is concerned. But you also need to create a relationship, probably more importantly, with the seller when you view the property. There's many a time, and I'll touch on this on the next point, but there's many a time where the seller will not necessarily sell the property to the highest bidder. Sounds odd, but it does happen from time to time. And they will sell it to somebody who they can imagine were like them when they were starting out. So you can imagine that you're going to see a property and the sellers have been living in the property for 10, 15 years, and they see that you are like them 10 or 15 years ago. And that might be worth money. You never know. That might be worth £500. That might be worth £1,000. That might be the difference between you getting the property of your dreams and not getting the property of your dreams. So try and create some sort of relationship with the seller so that at least when they see your offer, they remember who you are. You never know. It might just mean the difference between you getting the property and not getting the property. Okay, number 7, I mentioned that I would talk about this in the last video. This is all about the seller not accepting the highest offer. It seems odd, doesn't it, that the whole point about putting you into a closing date, you would have thought, is to ensure that the seller is going to get the highest offer. But their circumstances may dictate that they can't take the highest offer, and it is better for their situation to take a lower offer. So for example, if you're in the lucky position to be a cash buyer, then you may be in a better position because you can sign the contract that will allow the sellers then to buy their property. Always remember that when you view a property, that property is going to be your future, but the future of the seller, that lies in the property that they're going to buy. So if you can make their journey easier, then they may be prepared to look at your offer, notwithstanding the fact that it is in fact a lower offer. So be aware that a cash offer may well be worth money. It's very difficult to know how much money it's going to be worth, and that's clearly going to be dependent upon how close you are in relation to the next offer. So if you are looking at a property which maybe you're competing against others who have got to sell a property and you're in the lucky position where you don't, you're a first-time buyer, then again, that could potentially mean that you're going to be successful. And again, just as in the last video, it's so important to create that relationship. Everything that you do is to be done to ensure that you are creating the best possibility and opportunity for you to be successful at the closing date. Okay, this is number 8. Property are like buses. There will be another one around in another couple of minutes. And that's what you always must understand when you are bidding at a closing date, especially if you are a first-time buyer. In order for you to move up the food chain as far as property is concerned, you need to make profit out of every property that you buy. So it stands to reason that the more money that you pay at a closing date, then the longer you're going to have to potentially wait in order to make a profit on that property and then move up the food chain. Because if you pay anything over the home report value, technically speaking, your property then falls into negative equity, and you have to make sure that the market catches up and then goes ahead of your property to make a profit so that you can then sell and then move up the food chain. Very rarely is a property a one-off. Very rarely. I mean, if you're a first-time buyer and you're buying a tenement, you're probably attracted to it because internally it looks $1 million. But that's down to you. That's down to you to make it look like $1 million. And rest assured that if you are not successful in that property, the estate agent will then start leafleting other properties around that area. So if you're not successful with that one, then what potentially will happen is that similar properties will then come onto the market because the neighbours around the property have been leafleted by the estate agent, and they think, somebody's just sold a property, why don't I try and put my property on? So what's for you won't go by you. It's an old adage, but it is one that I'm sure it does work. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Okay, so we're on to number 9. How much should you put in at an offer over the home report value? It is very, very difficult, and there are a number of factors. If you're going to be staying in the property for a long period of time, maybe this is your forever home, your 10 or 15 year home, then by all means you may want to kitchen sink it. But if you're a first-time buyer, you need to be very wary that you're probably only going to be staying in this property for 2, 3, 4 years. So there's all sorts of considerations that you need to take into account. And one of the other considerations obviously is that there will be another property that you will fall in love with if you don't get this property. Rest assured, I've been in the game long enough, and from a personal point of view, that has happened on so many occasions. But the one thing I would say to you is that do not second guess what others are going to make as far as an offer is concerned. Stick to your guns and make that offer, okay? Don't try and second guess. Don't try and be cute. Don't try and be clever. And what I will say to my clients is that you need to be comfortable that when I phone you up and tell you that you have not been successful by £5 or £10, whatever, you must be comfortable that you have given it your best shot. So what you don't want is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed are you? 10, it's the end of the world. 1, what's for me won't go by you. You really want to be a 1, 2 or a 3 as far as that's concerned. Do not second guess. Make sure that you put in what you think is your best offer, and if you get it, great, and if you don't, listen, there'll be another one around anytime soon. Okay, so this is number 10, and this is a personal story. Should you make the offer or not? Okay, there is some reasoning behind saying, you know what, there's too many, I'm just not even going to bother. And that's happened to me. Okay, so the property that I'm staying in at the moment, we've been in here for 10, 12 years. My wife and I went to see a property and we were going to go and put an offer in. And I said to her, listen, our maximum budget is a certain amount. And I said, listen, it's going to go way over that. Of course, I knew everything. 10, 15 years in the property trade, of course, don't put an offer in because we're not going to be anywhere closer. I'm not going to waste my time. And so that's what we did. I didn't put an offer in. And my wife then phoned me up and said, well, listen, just phone them up and find out what the property went for, just so that we would know whether or not we could afford a similar type of property. And I phoned up the estate agents, and I always remember this, and I said to them, so well, tell me what did it go for, thinking it would have gone for, you know, way over what my expectations were. And they said to me that, well, they hadn't accepted any offer because none of the offers had been close to what they were looking for. And I thought, well, clearly the seller's wanting far too much for the property. And then I asked them, I said, well, what are you wanting? And the woman said to me a figure which was £10,000 less than what I had suggested we put an offer in at, where we didn't put an offer in at. I was absolutely blown away. So listen, I cannot possibly give you advice not to put an offer in the hope that that kind of scenario happens. That just doesn't happen. I don't think that's ever happened other than it happened to me. So listen, suck it up, put the offer in, make sure that the offer, as I said in the last video, make sure that the offer that you make is the best offer that you can possibly make, and hopefully you'll get that phone call to say it's yours. Okay, there we go. That's the 10 top tips as far as closing dates are concerned. Thanks very much for downloading those and subscribing to the channel. It really is much appreciated. If you wanted to have any further discussion as far as closing dates are concerned, or any advice that you need as far as a closing date is concerned, then please don't hesitate to give me a call. Delighted to have that conversation with you. Mortgages, if you're looking for a mortgage, then as I say, we are directly authorised, we are whole of market, so we can make sure that we can give you the peace of mind that you're looking for to ensure that you've got the best mortgage for your own circumstances. We're committed to ensuring that we give you the best advice, support and assistance throughout the whole mortgage journey. And remember the mortgage guarantee, that you get 100% mortgage guarantee, or if we can't get you a mortgage, then we'll give you your money back. No questions, no quibbles, nothing. So listen, do follow us on Facebook. We're on Facebook on a regular basis. We're also on Instagram, so do follow us there. But in the meantime, thanks very much again for downloading, and we will catch you very soon.